Good morning, gentlemen. Hope everyone's having a great day. Breaking down some Bitcoin here, jumping right in as usual. Starting with the weekly like we normally do. Really, the only thing I wanted to kind of update here is that, we talked about this within the last few days, whether or not this was going to stay as resistance. I mean, as of right now, Bitcoin's trying to poke itself up just above that. Um, if it can manage to get above it, hold it on, as far as on like a daily level, we could continue to see some upward momentum here. Um, for the moment, in terms of trying to say where realistically you might expect that it would get stopped out. Um, from a weekly standpoint, I suppose, this would have been a level I might have been looking at, or at this point with the bullishness that Bitcoin has come forward with, I'd say probably, more up into this range. So, potentially catapulting up to 42,000 here. So a couple of thousand more, it just really depends. I mean, I don't get to tell the market makers how the market works. I could just look at the chart and say, all right, well, this would, make sense here. Um, it was interesting. We did actually touch down to about 36,000. That gave us a higher high on a weekly or a higher low on a weekly basis. So, it's very feasible at this point that this is, at least a potentially sustainable move. Still, the question is, do we need to come back and put any tests in here? Won't know until a little bit later on. But yeah, as of right now, I mean the weekly has started out good. Obviously, I'm not telling anybody anything we don't know. Let's zoom in on the daily and see if we can kind of break down what's going on in here. All right, so zooming in here on the daily, you know, we just talked about the kind of the weekly resistances. We still got a handful of weekly resistance points up really to about here, so about just shy of 41,000. There's not a ton of pricing action that has taken place between these 2 points, however, right? You can see that this area right here is called a low volume. Well, these are technically low volume nodes. These are low volume nodes, but this is fairly low volume compared to the areas around it. So, as far as that part goes, any movement that takes place up to, through this area can move potentially pretty quickly. But it also means that it's just as feasible that it could sell off just as fast. So, the interesting thing here will be, does Bitcoin have enough momentum to go ahead and carry up past here, or at least to get up to here? And then we're looking, how does it react from there? If it pops up to here, what we would look for is a retest of this level, so about 39,000, and then potential upwards continuation. But you will notice one thing here. If I was to drop a trend line in here, you would notice that there is still one more level of resistance that maybe would prevent it from making that move. But we'll see here shortly. I'm getting that negative divergence notification. Sorry for the noise. Getting that because of the fact that Bitcoin is actually moving up right now. You can see it's up another $100 in the few seconds I've been talking there. So, yeah, let's zoom in on the tight time frames real quick, just so we can kind of take a peek in on that, and then really from there, let's wrap this up for the day. All right, so getting in on some shorter term time frames here. Obviously, you can see you can see the amount of time and effort that goes into charting these things out. You can actually follow my to an extent you can follow my thought process through all of this. I'll admit to myself I missed a big opportunity here yesterday off the support bounce at 236. Um, as far as that part goes, you know that would be something we want to buy every time. So as far as future wise, that's something that want to make sure that we're right on top of. But at this point, we're right back at some overhead resistance. We've got it right up to about here. Now, if Bitcoin breaks over this line right here, pops up here, and maybe starts to put in some sideways consolidation, this is a good level to buy as well. Um, it's similar to right here, just kind of watching it a little bit this morning. It came up, retested, and then boom up to this level. It actually did it twice. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as it goes, I mean, Bitcoin's making some progress there, but at some point this move does have to run out of some steam. Um, but and we do have some signs of some bearish divergence. So, going to be keeping a close eye on this today. At this stage, I would love to see it come back down one more time. Maybe put a retest on these two trend lines. And again, same concept here. I mean, if it wants to come back down and retest this again, we'll be happy to go ahead and comply and make the buy until it signals that it would not want to hold that trend line. So, looking for some big things here. Ultimately, as far as kind of just touching back on the general patterns and everything here. So this is the pattern. This is the downward pattern that Bitcoin just got absolutely destroyed out of. Right? It was a bear, or it was a bull flag. It was coming right down just fine, and then here it just decided to absolutely die. We lost that support. We lost that trend line. Came down here. Now the thing is, where do we if we can get back into this pattern, that's exactly what we want to see. And this thing could just, I mean, if we get back inside this pattern, who knows, we ride this up to here, kind of do some work, and then firing off again. The big thing is, in this kind of rounded bottom look, we've been talking about it. We were going to essentially get faked out of this rounded bottom pattern based on that 8 wave Elliott count, or 8 wave count Elliott wave theory. And we were anticipating this. Now the question becomes, how does the recovery back into that pattern work? And that's what we're going to be finding out soon. I would imagine, just kind of looking at it, it's feasible. I'd say maybe Bitcoin still maybe want to come back and backtest this level right here, somewhere in the 38.3, which would also, that would also give it a let's see, 38.3 approximately. They give it a back test on this. It was a support slash resistance. What we could be forming out here is a head and shoulders, inverse head and shoulders. So this would be one shoulder, this would be the head, this would be the other shoulder. So maybe, at that point, you might even anticipate something back in about the 38.1 range, which actually has some sensibility, because here's the 21 moving average right here on that hourly chart, and it's coming in. So yeah, it would make a ton of sense for that to come back and test that, and especially given how far away the 200 moving average is here, right? Like it would be difficult for me to believe that the pricing action would just run up and kiss this from this far away. So at this point, I would much more likely anticipate something where it comes back down, not a ton, probably again right to about where this low is over here, and then giving us potentially another push to the upside. Now, if it comes down here and it doesn't hold this level, then we start looking at again retracing a little bit further back. Who knows? Maybe even retesting the 236 fib level again. So yeah, that's the excitement for today. But yeah, I mean, especially with the S&P, I think they're, let's actually pull that up just briefly and talk about that, because Bitcoin and the stock market do highly correlate. All right, so just briefly touching on the S&P. This is a weekly chart right here, so we're capturing quite a bit of data here. Obviously, you can see that I marked the COVID-19 sell-off, and then you can see how we just went into an upward march, basically for the last 2 years. Really, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Um, I do tend to find that there's, a fairly significant level of cyclicality in all of these markets. If you look back here, so what we had about from here to this sell-off was, pretty close to 2 years, right? This one, I guess you could say, maybe came in a little bit earlier than expected, and then again we're approximately 2 years. Um, it's just interesting the way that some of that stuff works out. I mean, here, the biggest correction, 2011-ish, and then a pretty good run, I guess, up to 2015. So darn near 4 years there. But either way, the main thing I want to get at here is that, overall, and I could probably move this down here. I mean, it's tough to say exactly where that should go, but the S&P has been following a parabolic curve for a while here. Um, and at this point, it basically started going almost straight up. Here, it actually broke out of that already rising channel, right? So this is already rising. This is supposed to break down, and then all of a sudden, it goes on this torrent, boof, just blasts off right out of a rising channel. That's basically what you could assume here is that once it starts to come back down out of here, ideally, it's going to get some support here. So this would be the most ideal scenario I can see on the S&P, is that not entirely dissimilar from Bitcoin, that we start to find some sort of pocket on the weekly chart where we can say, all right, well, yeah, I mean, if maybe if we can hold this lower trend line, we start to get some upside again. Well, here's the thing: once we started to lose these levels up here, I've measured out some different moves. We got the initial move here. You can see my little it hit there, came down, and actually ended up losing that. Came down, tested here, came up here. Anyway, right now we're caught up in this little range, right? I think it's still feasible based on one of the other measured moves that the S&P actually comes down and tests this level right here. And at which point we just have to hope that this trend line would then hold up, because then we can start to move back up. Same concept as on Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin actually came down and went below the 80 simple moving average. The S&P has not done that yet. So if we assume for 1 second that Bitcoin and the S&P are going to follow each other, at least reasonably, and kind of mirror one another, well, then the S&P's got some further distance to fall, which means potentially that Bitcoin may as well. I don't know that we could go as far as to say that those two things necessarily correlate that closely, though, right? That each weekly chart needs to be, but again, we're looking at pivot points here. Ideally, by the end of this week, this craziness ends. We hold this support, and then we can at least kind of bounce back up to this level, next couple of weeks, and actually make some progress back up the chart. Again, coming down to here would be like, this would be something that wouldn't blow my mind. It wouldn't surprise me, but obviously that's going to feel some pain. Let me zoom in just on a little shorter time frame here. I think it's worthwhile to talk about this on a shorter time frame as well, just to see kind of how this area may play out, because you can see here we've got a bottom. Right now, we've got a bottom that is equivalent, but you can't see it as well. Give me 1 second, we'll zoom in. All right, so last thing here, I zoomed this in on an hour time frame, just so we could kind of see what I was talking about on the larger picture here. So here's the deal: we've got this rounded top kind of that formed out here. We're also in some falling channels and et cetera. So I mean, there are a few patterns possibly in play here. But I think this one obviously makes sense. I mean, you can see the obvious rounded nature of that pattern. Rounded patterns do one of two things when they break out. One of the things that they do is they just parabolic move whichever the direction, the opposite direction of the 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 rounded cup. So in this case, it's a downward rounding motion. So potentially it gets over to this region and you get a parabolic move to the downside. The other thing that they do is you get a cup and then a handle. So in the event that we get a handle, it would end up looking something similar to this rising channel right here, where we could just go ahead and move this down to right here, and say, all right, well, cool, that we're gonna go ahead and move out of there like this, as opposed to the parabolic downside version. Obviously, it's fairly evident which one of those is the preferred. I just don't get to make the decision as to which of those is going to happen. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, trust me, if you're seeing articles out there, they're talking about all the, you know, the fund managers and everything are a little tense right now. There's a reason for it, right? Like, the market is right on the edge of a major correction, or potentially major. If we just simply said, all right, well, let's take a look at that. That is the measured move of the pattern. and that would take us all the way back on the S&P to under 4,000, and that would be from about 4,800. So we're talking a 20% decline. 30% is officially a bear market. So is it just going to be a correction? Is it going to be a bear market? These questions they will be answered soon enough. But again, by somebody other than me. But the one thing I did want to point out was that, yesterday when we were just getting absolutely hammered, um, the S&P did come here, touch down real close to support, got a real nice pop. And then this hourly candle right here, if it can find support at this level, then we've actually got a chance to get up out of here a little bit. And then it's just a matter of whether it comes right back down, back into this lower pattern. So we'll see. Again, at least for the start to the day, I'm hopeful that we gap up. I didn't look just yet, but yeah, that's the breakdown for the day. Appreciate your time and listening. Have a great day.